Susanna identified several pitfalls of collaboration, but how do you know when to call it off before wasting resources when you see problems brewing? Does anybody have examples or suggestions?
I think one of the items here is to really look about the importance of the mission and why the group has decided or is choosing to come together. And if the mission and purpose is strong enough that will hold the collaboration or the leadership that supports the collaboration together, then there are some strategies to work through, at times, barriers. But in regard to when is the right time, I think that's very contextual in that process, but others feel free to.
I think it's sometimes helpful. Our organization, as I said, is reaching the end of its designated period, and the question wasn't, it's do we continue? And I think bringing in outside expertise that's objective. And we did bring in a consultant to help us look at the future, and that didn't have a lot of baggage, and I think that was helpful. Bring in somebody from the outside to help you work it through before you call it quits.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, seeing there are no African Americans on the panel, are there any models of organizations or models of collaborations that have successfully received and are operating with federal funded grants?
So no, I'm not African American. However, our New Communities program is operating in 16 neighborhoods, many of which are predominantly African American. And I've worked or am working in Inglewood, have worked in Woodlawn, have worked in the Mid-South area and other African American communities. And I think it's a good question. One, I do believe that models that oftentimes are applied for one neighborhood do not automatically fit to another. I think what we've done in New Communities program is, rather than saying there's one model, there's a series of principles or methodology then we ask the locals to apply and make work for their neighborhood. One model in Inglewood, actually, what has worked and has received federal dollars, including the resources around prisoner reentry, and the name of it is escaping me, but in Inglewood, and those of you if you're from Inglewood are familiar with this neighborhood, it's a neighborhood that has a lot of individuals who have set up nonprofits but perhaps don't have a lot of capacity, and then a few what I'll just call them sort of external folks who've come in and sort of set up shop, and so that would be sort of a Salvation Army or a Chassis and our needed services, but sometimes there's that conflict between outside coming in versus local limited capacity. And our lead agency is Teamwork Inglewood there. And frankly, we created that from scratch. And it also did the thing of sort of blowing up a couple times before I think we found some good, solid leadership there now. And I think the reason they have successfully been able to leverage federal resources, particularly around this prisoner reentry work, is because they have been collaborative and they had a quality of life plan. And so they were able to take a lot of what's individual leadership in the neighborhood and bring it together on a common vision. And I think one of the challenges in some of our African American or other low-income neighborhoods is it's not that we don't have resource or leadership, it's that it's disorganized. And I think federal and city government wants to invest in neighborhoods, but they're afraid of the landmines or don't know who can take on the resource. And so I think it's actually beholden to ourselves as leaders in our neighborhoods to figure out how to put aside the individual differences. And again, there has to be an entity that has some solvency, that has some ability to say we will represent on behalf of all these different interests a common interest. And if prisoner reentry was that interest and outside folks wanted to help, this was a neutral enough vehicle with a common enough vision that it was able to leverage those significant resources.